Subscribe because it's free.
The Vorthlek Empire had seen countless worlds fall before them. Across the stars, civilizations had knelt, their rulers offering feeble resistance before submitting to the inevitable. And now, their cold, reptilian eyes turned toward a small, insignificant blue planet in the Sol system, Earth. From the moment they observed humanity, the conclusion was obvious. These creatures were nothing more than fragile, soft-bodied organisms, their technology laughably primitive compared to the Empire's might. Insects, that was a word Supreme Strategist Xyrellus used when briefing his war council. They scurried about their world, waging petty wars, struggling against nature itself, barely managing to leave the confines of their homeworld. The idea that such a species could pose any kind of threat was absurd. Xyrellus stood before the grand holodisplay, observing the projections. Earth civilizations were fractured, their weapons outdated, their fleets nothing more than crude metal shells. The Empire's warships dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, their weapons capable of reducing entire continents to ash within seconds. The conquest of Earth would be routine, a minor footnote in the Empire's ever-expanding dominion. A junior strategist raised a question. Why had no other empire conquered Earth before? The answer was simple: no one had bothered. The planet had nothing of value. No unique resources, no strategic advantage. It was a backwater world filled with creatures too weak to matter. But the Empire did not conquer for necessity. They conquered because it was their nature. They expanded, crushed, dominated. Because anything less was weakness. The invasion fleet entered the solar system without resistance. Humanity had no orbital defenses, no planetary shields. The first broadcast was sent in all known human languages. Surrender, accept servitude. Resistance would only bring extinction. The response was expected: confusion, fear, desperation. The humans sent their diplomats, their world leaders speaking of peace, of coexistence. A meaningless display. The Vorthlek did not negotiate with lesser beings. They gave Earth a single cycle to comply. If humanity refused, their species would be eradicated. On the surface, some factions debated surrender. Others argued for defiance. In the end, the decision did not matter. The moment the Vorthlek fleet arrived, the outcome had already been decided. Or so they believed. Xyrellus observed the first strikes from the command deck of his flagship, watching with amusement as orbital bombardments rained down upon human military installations. Cities burned. Airfields turned to molten slag. Their primitive satellites were torn from the sky, like insects swatted mid-flight. It was almost too easy, yet something was off. Even as their world crumbled, the humans did not panic. There was no mass capitulation, no desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they moved with precision. Military forces relocated instantly. Civilian populations evacuated faster than expected. Even their responses, crude as they were, demonstrated a level of coordination that was unsettling. One of the war tacticians dismissed it as insignificant. "They are merely stubborn," he hissed. "Like insects clinging to life before the inevitable." Xyrellus agreed, but deep down, a fragment of doubt whispered, why did the humans not behave as expected? Where was the desperation, the broken spirits? What was this eerie sense of resolve? A message arrived from the surface, intercepted from human communications. It was short, a single sentence spoken by one of their commanders. "We do not surrender." The words meant nothing to the Vorthlek. Surrender was never an option. It was a certainty. And yet, something about the way it was spoken sent an uneasy ripple through the War Council. They ignored it. They did not realize that, in that moment, they had already lost. The first wave of the invasion was meant to be swift, a show of overwhelming force, designed to break the human spirit before true war could even begin. It had worked 100 times before. It would work again. Vorthlek warships descended into Earth's atmosphere, their sleek, organic hulls cutting through the sky like predatory beasts. Their ground forces deployed in perfect formation, crushing all resistance beneath their relentless advance. The humans fought, of course. They always did, but their weapons were outdated, their defenses pathetic. This war should have been over before it even started. Yet it wasn't. The first signs of something wrong came quickly. The humans refused to scatter like prey. They did not fight with desperation. They fought with something else. Strategy, coordination, purpose. Vorthlek command centers began receiving troubling reports. Human aircraft, those obsolete metal husks they called jets, were engaging in aerial combat with unexpected efficiency. Pilots used suicidal maneuvers, taking out warships in reckless, unpredictable ways. A single human squadron lured an entire Vorthlek air division into a canyon, then detonated explosives that collapsed the rock walls around them. They had willingly sacrificed themselves just to take their enemies with them. On the ground, the Empire's mechanized infantry met resistance unlike anything recorded in previous conquests. Humans fought not just with weapons, but with their surroundings. They used cities as traps, tunnels as ambush points, turning their own ruined infrastructure into a battlefield tailored for asymmetric warfare. The Empire's superior technology began to mean less and less. Their energy shields, designed to counter plasma-based weaponry, were useless against kinetic munitions, primitive bullets and explosives, yet fired with devastating accuracy. The humans didn't need advanced tech. They only needed to find weak spots, and they did. Then came the cyber attacks. Vorthlek command networks, supposedly unbreachable, began failing. Ships lost contact with each other. Tactical data became corrupted. Entire platoons were cut off from coordination. At first, Xyrelis dismissed it as a minor inconvenience. Then an entire fleet lost navigation and plummeted into the Pacific Ocean. This was no desperate struggle. This was methodical, deliberate. It was not the behavior of an inferior species. The War Council grew restless. The humans had suffered catastrophic losses, yet their resistance only intensified. Casualty reports showed something deeply unsettling. Their soldiers fought even when grievously injured. Medics stabilized those who should have died. Wounded fighters returned to battle faster than expected. The Vorthlek had seen stubborn species before, but never like this. A transmission arrived, this time directly targeting Vorthlek Command. A human voice, calm and controlled, spoke in their tongue. You wanted a war. Now you have one. The War Council fell silent. Xyrelis clenched his claws. This was not how the invasion was supposed to unfold. Humanity was not supposed to be like this. He turned to his strategists. Increase the bombardments. Destroy their supply chains. Starve them if we must. A chilling reply came from one of his lieutenants. They aren't breaking. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthlek felt something unfamiliar creeping into their thoughts. Doubt. Xyrelis stood in the war chamber, staring at the latest reports. They made no sense. Logically, mathematically, humanity should have crumbled by now. Their cities burned. Their infrastructure was in ruins. Their casualties far exceeded anything a species should be able to endure. And yet, they were not losing. No, something far worse was happening. They were adapting. Every engagement revealed something new, something disturbing. The humans were no longer simply resisting. They were learning. Every Vorthlek tactic, every strategic maneuver, every overwhelming show of force countered. Not immediately, no, but after every battle, humanity improved. Their pilots changed their formations. Their infantry altered their patterns. Their cyber attacks became more precise, as if they were dissecting Vorthlek technology in real time. This wasn't simple defiance. It was evolution under fire. The Vorthlek had never faced an enemy like this. Conquered races usually had one response to overwhelming force: submission. If not that, then mindless rebellion. Uncoordinated, desperate, doomed. But the humans? They absorbed everything, discarded their weaknesses, and made the Vorthlek pay for every inch of ground they took. Entire Vorthlek strike teams vanished without a trace in cities that should have been abandoned. Supply lines, once secured, were now ambush zones. The very streets had become weapons against them. A report arrived from the outer colonies, intercepted from a human transmission. Do not fear them. They bleed. They die. And we are just getting started. Xyrelis tightened his grip on the datapad, his claws cracking the metal casing. This was not resistance. This was something else. Fear was growing among the Empire's war strategists. Discussions in the council chambers had shifted from when Earth would fall to how much it would cost. Xyrellus refused to accept this change in tone. He silenced any who spoke of retreat. The Empire had never lost a war. That would not change now. Yet, despite his orders, something deeper, something unspoken, had begun to take root in the minds of his officers. The humans should have surrendered. Any rational species would have. But the more they were pushed, the more impossible they became. Reports flooded in of human soldiers surviving wounds that should have been fatal. They fought through broken bones, through fire and blood, through exhaustion that should have claimed them long ago. Vorthlek warriors, conditioned for conquest, began hesitating in battle, whispering of encounters where human combatants continued fighting even after being impaled, even after losing limbs. Rumors spread among the lower ranks that humans could not be killed the same way as other species, that they did not know when to stop, that something was wrong with them. Then came the worst discovery yet. A small Vorthlek outpost, located far from the primary war zones, was destroyed overnight. When reinforcements arrived, they found no trace of their own forces. Only a single message left behind, painted in blood across the ruins of the command center. "We do not break." Xyrellus stared at the image, feeling something he had never known before. Dread, panic had begun to seep into the once invincible Vorthlek war machine. Xyrellus could feel it, unspoken but undeniable, in the way his officers carried themselves. Their once proud posture had stiffened. Their words, once filled with certainty, were now cautious, measured. The invasion force that had arrived with the confidence of gods now whispered of impossible defeats, of nightmares made real. Humanity was no longer just resisting. They were hunting. Vorthlek patrols started vanishing without a trace. Elite strike teams sent to eliminate human strongholds never returned. Those who did, those rare survivors, came back broken, wide-eyed, speaking in hushed, trembling voices about the horrors they had witnessed. "They don't fight like prey," one soldier had muttered before being executed for cowardice. "They fight like predators, like something that was waiting for this." Xyrellus dismissed it at first. Superstition, weakness. But the battlefield told a different story. Humanity was no longer simply adapting. They were anticipating. The Empire's tactics, once unstoppable, were now predictable. Their formations, their strategies, their technology, picked apart and used against them. Human snipers, once little more than an annoyance, had evolved into ghosts of war. Vorthlek officers were being eliminated with chilling precision, their command structures collapsing before reinforcements could even arrive. Vorthlek warships, once untouchable in the skies, were now prey. Human pilots, in their outdated fragile craft, had found weaknesses in the Empire's energy shielding. They struck at key structural points, exploiting vulnerabilities that had never been discovered in thousands of years of warfare. Entire Vorthlek battalions fell to human ambushes that seemed almost designed for them, as if the humans knew exactly how they would react, as if they had seen this war play out before and were now simply executing a plan. But the worst moment, the one that changed everything, came when the Vorthlek homeworld received a message. It was not a plea, not a desperate call for surrender. It was a declaration, a video broadcast in perfect Vorthlek dialect. A human soldier stood over the broken body of a Vorthlek warlord. His armor was damaged, his face bloodied, but his eyes burned with something ancient, something terrifying. "You called us insects," he said, voice calm, steady. He lifted his weapon, primitive, brutal, soaked in alien blood. "Then you should have crushed us completely." The feed cut to static. Silence filled the Vorthlek war chamber. No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time in the history of their empire, they understood what it meant to make a mistake. Xyrellus exhaled slowly, his claws gripping the edges of the command table. The weight of realization settled upon him, heavy and inescapable. This was no longer a war of conquest. This was a war of survival. And for the first time, the Vorthlek knew what fear truly was.